Now we're going to have a man who's changed the lives of so many, and who is a historian as well. I don't know if you know it, but I'm sure he's going to talk about it. Mr. Jeffery Leving. You saw him on the commercials. He's the father's rights. I mean, he's the man when it comes to father's rights, and he's represented a lot of us. Okay, Mr. Jeffery Leving.
Well, it's an honor to be here, a pleasure to be here, and I just came back from Los Angeles lecturing on fathers' rights, and the rights of all fathers, because unfortunately we're not only dealing with gender bias, but also there's discrimination in our system related to national origin, race, and other issues, and it's very, very difficult, and a lot of fathers are kicked to the curb. And if you study father absence by race and ethnicity, you'll see that it's substantially higher in different communities. It's higher in the African American community compared to the Hispanic. The Hispanic community is higher than in the Caucasian community. The reason for this is racial discrimination, in part because a lot of African American men have been kicked out of their communities through government programs, through the media, through brainwashing, and right now it's turned into an epidemic. 24 million children live absent their biological father in America. A lot of people will say, so what? It doesn't really matter. Margaret Mead said that fathers are a biological necessity but social accident. And that's not true. You know why? Because a boy can't be what he can't see. And a lot of these boys don't even know who their fathers are, and they don't know who is their dad. They don't know how to define maleness, so they'll define maleness with an adult male in their neighborhood who will rape them. So what a lot of fatherless boys are doing now, they're defining what a man is by what they see on TV. And how does television define maleness? Violence, abusing women, and other just unemployment. If a man is working and he's a productive job as an accountant, that's not a man. A man is a gangbanger who's making a lot of money selling drugs and has recreational sex partners with multiple women. That's what the media is doing. It's destroying our children. So one thing we have to do, because it's going to be hard to control the media, because the media is a multi-billion-dollar business. You're not going to control the media because they don't, in my opinion, care about our children, because ratings equal dollars. And they're not going to lose ratings and lose billions of dollars because of our children. But what we can do is re-engage fathers in positive relationships with their children and not kick them to the curb. I know it's hard to do, but we need to do it. And also, we have to remember that in the United States, approximately 1/3 of all children are born out of wedlock. Now, what does that mean? That means a lot of those children will never know their fathers. It also means a lot of those mothers will be getting no child support. So this is a disaster. It's a real problem. Now, I've represented a lot of fathers. I've represented artists. I've represented Twista, who I think is a great father. I represented Jagged Edge, NFL players, lawyers, politicians, and I've represented homeless fathers, ex-offender fathers, incarcerated fathers, and they all have the same problem. They're all struggling against gender bias and discrimination, and the only way it's going to go away is if we make it go away. It's not going to go away by itself, and it's terrible. And one thing we have to remember is that any man's loss of a child diminishes mankind, and that's what's happening right now. And I know there's not a lot of time here for me to talk, but if you want to get an idea of why I do this type of work, it started out many years ago as a young lawyer handling a lot of crazy cases in the legal system, fighting for justice and trying to keep young men out of jail who were charged with crimes they didn't commit, and trying to help fathers stay out of jail for not paying child support when they were dead broke, not deadbeat, and trying to help children by re-engaging fathers and children in positive relationships. And there's so many different cases, I don't know where to begin, but I'll try and give you two quick examples. One was a criminal case I handled as a young lawyer, and my client was charged with burglary. And there were two eyewitnesses, the arresting officer and the woman that owned the clothing store that was allegedly burglarized. And they both testified against my client, and my client signed a confession. What I believe happened here was a police officer intimidated this woman to testify falsely in court to put my client in prison. But it was a strong case. I tried the case, and I got a not guilty. And part of that was a miracle. Another part was the police officer lied under oath. There was a co-defendant who I didn't represent, and he was charged with burglary, but he had a different lawyer because there was a conflict of interest. So the other lawyer, whose client had a winnable case, there were no witnesses. He just happened to be walking down the street at the wrong time, and he looked like someone who would fit the profile of a criminal. So the police snatched him and arrested him. No eyewitnesses, a case I could have probably tried and won half asleep. The lawyer pled him guilty to multiple years in prison. And afterward, I spoke to the lawyer, and he looked at me and he said, "Well, how did you win that case? That was impossible." And I said, "I don't know, I just tried." I told him the worst type of failure is not to try. And then I said, "Well, why did you plead your client guilty to a crime I don't think he committed?" And he looked at me and he said something to the effect, this is a long time ago, he said, "Well, you're a young lawyer. Don't be stupid. I'm not going to try a case for a bond slip." So he was working on the bond slip. So he pled the guy guilty because there wasn't enough money to try the case and keep somebody who I thought was innocent out of prison. These are the types of cases that have pushed me to do this type of work. I represented one client in DuPage County, and I think the judge wanted to send him to jail just because he was African American. And I kept him out of jail. The judge hated me for that because I actually went over his head. And the judge is no longer a judge, thank God. And so I'm happy about that. And then another case, very quickly, because I have exactly 3 minutes. I represented a father in a case where the mother, while under the influence of drugs and alcohol, smashed up the vehicle she was driving, causing permanent brain damage to their baby boy. And the judge did not want to give custody to the father because he was a male, as I saw it. Luckily, I was able to get the child transferred to the father, and as I was walking out of the courtroom, and keep in mind this little boy then was in Cook County Hospital, he'll never be able to walk again, permanently brain damaged, and the judge started yelling at me, and she said, "Counselor, I want the mom in rehab. I want her off drugs, off alcohol, and then when she's rehabilitated, I want that child returned to her. Do you understand me, counselor?" And I was thinking to myself, this is a real broken legal system. You got really broken. Got innocent men in prison for crimes they didn't commit, guilty men walking free, and then you have children at risk, children being abused because the system just is not working. And in my final comment, I got a call from a sergeant, U.S. Army, was deployed in Iraq, comes back to the U.S. to find out his little boy was beaten to death by the mother's lover. That was all over the newspapers. I was able to get the surviving siblings placed in his care, but it was tough. I had a fight in court to get it done, and DCFS did not place the surviving children with the dad, which to me was wrong. But it's part of the injustices we all have to recognize, because if we sweep them under the carpet and pretend bias doesn't exist and everything's okay, things won't change. But I appreciate everybody, and I coming here, and I have some books out there. I have a new book coming out in April, but it's not out yet. It's called How to Be a Good Divorced Dad, and I got an endorsement from President Obama, and I also have an endorsement from the Archdiocese. Unfortunately, my publisher won't use either of them, and I'm very angry with that. But I guess there's problems in the publishing world just as in the legal system. Thank you.
Mr. Leving, give him another hand. Jeffrey Leving. He didn't have to be here, but he's here. Not only that, but a lot of things that he's done for our community, he didn't even talk about. Like I said, he's a great historian. He has a lot of African American history that he needs archived, and we're going to do that.